but we'll try our best to handle it, as it's going to be Sardines, aka Pavilisk, versus Mighty Kiwi, aka David, for Root Seed. So different names in game than we have on our rosters, but no big deal. We'll try and keep it straight. But so this game here is fairly clutch in reverse for Root Seed, whereas game number 3 was that clutch game for Team Ascension. Sorry, I keep trying to say StarCraft Ascension, but that's what they were going by last season.
Yeah, Team Ascension, I think formerly known as Team.SCA, but yeah, it's going to be a pretty interesting match. I know that Mighty Kiwi is definitely a player that's turned a couple of heads before from Root Seed Academy, and I'm actually not as familiar with Pavlis, so I'd love to see those bio sheets.
Let's get familiar with him. His name is Sardines, and we'll be playing as Pavlis this evening. He started with NMX in Wings of Liberty. He's a longtime member, recently promoted to the A team of Team Ascension. He has a lot of potential and will continue growing, that coming from the Team Ascension captain, so definitely you can tell a lot of respect there for a very quickly growing player. Win rate's fairly even across the board, a little bit above average on this map, so we'll see if that plays any sort of factor. But from Seed, we're going to be seeing Mighty Kiwi, aka David. He is a 19-year-old from New Zealand, started playing 6 months after the Wings of Liberty release. He got interested in the game by watching casted matches on YouTube. He started as Zerg and has never ever wavered, and is also known for his aggressive ZVZ style.
And go figure, man, his name is actually David.
Yep, that's very convenient.
Indeed. I don't actually think that... I don't believe that Sardine's name is actually Pavilisk, is it?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't actually know where those names came from, but I have it.
Oh, it's actually Pavel. It's Pavel. Close enough. That's actually really cool.
There you go. It's the and he's but he's not Zerg, so a little bit there. But this is going to be going into game number 6 here very quickly with a score of 3-2 in favor of Team Ascension. We get to start saying that, and let's jump right on in, Mr. Feardragon.
All right, let's do it. As we spawn down here in the bottom left-hand corner of the map way station, on top of the orange Protoss player representing Team Ascension, it is Sardines.
And on the opposite side of the map, in the upper right-hand corner, representing Root Seed's Academy team, also the color teal in the race Zerg, he is David, aka Mighty Kiwi.
And Wingnut, this is the second PvZ I think we've been able to see today. The first PvZ, a very, very interesting game number 1, where we talked a lot about third expansions and how hard they were to take. What do you think about third expansions on this map?
This map, I think, is a little bit easier. The paths are a little bit more constrained, at least on the north side of the expansion. But there are a lot of paths in, including these fairly significant ramps, and it's, as you know, very hard to defend up a ramp. So we will see how that goes. But Protoss definitely having a lot of plays up its sleeve on 2 bases these days, and I feel like those plays are really strong. And if you probably one of my favorites is just a lot of zealots, either from a warp prism or a proxy pylon, to take out a third, that sort of zealot timing push to hold the Zerg back and then take your own third.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a lot of really, really strong 2-base timing pushes. And honestly, one of the really cool things that I think is very unique to this map is a Protoss player can actually go for some 2-base timing pushes, would say like an immortal-centric quote-unquote all-in, but you still make just a couple of extra probes, and what you actually do is you say, normally this is an all-in because I would have no possible way of defending a third expansion if this failed, but there's an island map, or island base on this map. I can actually use a warp prism to drop off a probe over there and take a third expansion that my opponent really can't put pressure on. Because guess what? If they were going for Mutalisk, more likely than not, they probably died to the Immortal Sentry all-in. If they're not, what are they really going to do about it?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. I really, I sometimes forget about these islands over here because I almost put them out of my mind once Heart of the Swarm came out, because there was a gaping lack of maps with islands, and they are one of my favorite terrain items, especially when we're playing playing around a little more sillily than other times, but definitely a factor to consider. And, you know, especially there's a few plays, like you said, that take that into account, and if a player doesn't exactly think of that, it can really catch you off guard if you let it go for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen it happen in a couple, not an absurd number of PVZs or anything, or even TVZs or TV whatevers. I've seen it a little bit more popular for Terran players, but it has been known to happen on occasion. So it's something I always look forward to, and I kind of cross my fingers and pray for, because it's so much fun and exciting to see. Just a nice little mix-up in how players kind of deal with the map. But I don't know, what do we end up seeing coming out so far from these players?
So we're kind of seeing fairly standard play. It looks like a couple Zerglings coming up to poke up at the pylon, which in pre-Mothership Core times would have been a little bit of a problem, but now that Mothership Core will just end up pushing them away. And, you know, it seems like the Protoss meta is changing a little bit, as it seemed like for a long time in 80 to 85% of games you would see the Forge Fast expand at the natural expansion. And now players are kind of lending themselves more towards this gateway at the top of the ramp, Cybercore, then Nexus, then Wall. How do you think that plays into what Zergs have been doing these days?
You know, this is something that it was a big change in the meta a little while ago, and you know what, Protoss players, they honestly just, in general, overall feel you get a little bit more ahead by going for the gateway expansion, so most players just oftentimes do that. Zerg players have been responding by getting up that earlier Zergling speed, because it allows you to deal with a lot of those earlier Protoss gateway aggression pushes, especially if they go for something like a 4 gateway aggression that we almost could have seen come out in that first game of the series. But it basically just means, the way that I like to think about it is, think about all those Protoss 2-base timing pushes that can come out. On average, they come out about 2 minutes ahead. 2 minutes earlier, because you get up the gateway earlier. So, of course, Zerg players do have to deal with that by getting up that earlier Gas Geyser, maybe getting up an earlier Roach Warren, as we now end up seeing Roach Warren going up around 6:30.
Yeah, he did have his speed done, but he has not made any additional Zerglings yet, opting for a third base. I mean, you feel like he kind of got that speed as a just-in-case?
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those, if my opponent just makes a ton of Zealots and moves across the map, I need to be prepared to deal with it, because, again, the gateways are up earlier. He has the potential to make those units a lot earlier. But now we also have the Roach One going up and the Evolution Chamber. And the Evolution Chamber, to me, does say that, you know, I think that Mighty Kiwi is saying, you know what? Let's bring this to a bit of a later game. I have my 3rd expansion going up and everything. And maybe I will try and deny a 3rd expansion of the Protoss player.
There's a Sacrificial Overlord headed across the base of David. This 7-minute timing is the most key timing to send that Sacrificial Overlord across, because that's when the big tech transitions come in. This is when I used to play PvZ and Wings of Liberty. I always had it built into my head when I used to diddle with Zerg a little bit, that Overlord has to go across at 7 minutes. But he honestly didn't really see a whole lot. Now these the Twilight Council and Robo going down sort of post-Overlord, I think.
Yeah, he did not actually see that.
Yeah, he did not see that.
So one of those funny things that you were just saying, like, Zerg players know that that's a really important time for Protoss players to, like, try and throw down their tech. So Protoss players actually just get really cheeky, and they say, I'm going to wait for that Overlord to pop in, and as soon as you scout over a location, I'm just going to plop down my tech over there while I kill off your Overlord. And then the Zerg players are none the wiser.
I actually like those pylons over there, because you almost feel like that's exactly what he had in mind. Because it's the only thing over there. But now Blink coming out, as we've seen in previous matches, that Blink can be oh so useful. Also 3rd base. This is a pretty macro-ish PvZ so far. We haven't really seen any aggression come out of Pavilisk, aka Sardines here. So I mean, David has kind of been left to his own devices, and that's kind of scary to let a Zerg go too far all by himself to do whatever he wants here, as the Roach numbers are continuing to grow. +1 range is coming up, as well as Roach speed, and now he's going to start pushing himself across the map. And the creep spread actually has gotten out really far as well.
Yeah, and the thing is, he actually saw that 3rd expansion going down, so he's making as many Roaches as he can, and he's delaying throwing down any kind of big lair tech to say, you know what, I'm not going to let you get up this 3rd expansion. Or he may actually just go for the natural expansion. Oh my god, he's going to go for the natural expansion. And the entire army is completely out of position to deal with this, Wingnut.
Yeah, now +1 is just finishing as... Oh, nice force fields there. Do cut off 2 Roaches. Those will... Silkone does make it out, but he's going to continue pushing here, which may be a little bit eager here for David as those
Zerglings
roaches
in the main
just...
base right now. There's a lot of Zerglings actually doing a lot of damage. They managed to kill off a good 10 or so workers. So I think it was definitely worth it so far for Mighty Kiwi.
Yeah, that's actually really awesome control. You see that when you separate units like that, and those roaches basically just being a distractionary tactic here, and that explains why he is maybe not getting the best end of those force fields, because he's working with his Zerglings in the main base.
Yeah, and at the same time, the roaches trying to pick off whatever they can. Every single sentry that they pick off is actually really, really awesome, because Pros players do not want to replenish those. At the same time, the Zerglings do manage to kill up the single Artosis pylon, the only one that existed. Every other one was double backed up, but now the roaches coming back in over here, taking out sentry after sentry. Once these sentries are knocked out, what is there really going to be to defend this third expansion?
There's not going to be anything but that Photon Overcharge, which will do quite a bit of damage over time, but this +1 attack upgrade has been absolutely insane for these roaches, doing so much damage, like you said, against all these sentries. He keeps warping them in and, you know, only getting really one force field out of each sentry before it goes down. That's a lot of resources.
The thing is, right now, Wingnut, even if he keeps his sentries alive, he's still in a lot of trouble. Making 3 extra sentries or 4 extra sentries, that's 400 gas that should have been going into more tech, and that he's just not going to have that. Even if he manages to defend this, which it looks like he is going to be able to, he's going to be sitting so much further behind than he really wanted to be. He lost a lot of workers. He has delayed throwing down a Templar Archives, or even a Robotics Bay, or whatever he would have normally thrown down by now.
I think David definitely got done what he wanted to. Is he got his 4th base down that is established. He's going to be droning that up now. He has vision on almost every other important base on the map. Overseer going across the base of Pavlis right now, and kind of supplementing it with Zerglings and Hydralisks, and a lot of them.
Yeah, Sardines is going to be sitting in a very, very nice little position. I mean, the creep spread is also very, very helpful in this situation.
Creep spread is insane.
Exactly. I mean, it's basically stretched out so far across the map. There is an observer, so it looks like Sardines will be able to start picking out some of these creep tumors, but it just buys a little bit of extra time. He gets advanced warning of, okay, is my opponent really going to be committing to this? And guess what? Look at this nice concave that Sardines is already setting himself up for. The Zerglings, the Hydros, the Roaches are going to be coming in. The Blink Stalkers could try and blink back, but guess what? Those sentries are going to die regardless of how this engagement goes.
Absolutely, and that creep spread being so valuable for David right now, because he can reinforce so quickly with Roach Speed and Hydros heading across that creep. They can make it over to David's base to reinforce their allies in a very, very quick manner. And now, you know, Pavlis, aka Sardines here, running into a backfoot, these Blink Stalkers not being as useful because the numbers of Roaches and Hydralisks are just becoming overwhelming here. He has not even really been able to establish his 3rd base, and that's going to be GG.
And it looks like Rootseed Academy's Mighty Kiwi being able to even up the series, and now, Wingnuts.
Now, go ahead, get it out of your system.
Now we are brought to the 8th match in this best of 7 series.
And honestly, it's kind of cool how your camera is right now, because it looks like we're on one of those, what was that old show with, what's his face, the Priceline guy.
Oh, yeah.
It's like our dark silhouette interview here, secret guest caster, Feardragon.
I apologize for this, guys. By the way, for those of you who don't know, I am in the middle of moving, and so I don't have my usual setup. Normally I have like bright lights blaring in my face so I can barely even see what's going on the screen, but right now I'm trying out my film noir style. I'm thinking about becoming a detective.
I like it actually, that your little painting art thing on the back is nice accent over your shoulder.
It's a dark and stormy night here at Wingnut, and there's only one person who can walk out of this replay alive, and I'll tell you, it's going to be a Protoss player.
Yep, that's a fair assumption. But before we get too far, going back to that last game, I mean, what do you think was the big game changer for either of those players?
Honestly, I think the biggest thing was just how Mighty Kiwi kind of saw, okay, you're trying to get this 3rd expansion up, I'm not going to let you do that. And Sardines, honestly, just was not really prepared for that big aggression that Mighty Kiwi put on. And he ended up losing a lot of sentries. And after that was actually the big turning point, was that he ended up losing so many of those gateway units. And even if he kept his 3rd expansion alive, he had to warp in more sentries. which meant that his gas was going into making more gateway units that he honestly just wanted to have kept alive. He wants to use that gas into making tech units. Imagine if he'd be able to get out 1 or 2 or 3 Colossus, or even just a couple High Templars or Archons, or big power splash damage units out. Then you know what? Those later engagements, they actually look to be a lot better in favor of maybe not even in favor of the Protoss player, but it becomes a lot more even. But when you lose those big gas-intensive units that early on in the game, you are just in such an uncomfortable position as a Protoss player. So Mighty Kiwi did a great job kind of identifying that. Honestly, it was just a downward spiral from that point onwards. Just that initial aggression that Mighty Kiwi was able to put on.
I'm going to ask you another question here, because as you were talking about that, it kind of made me think of it, is, Sardines kind of seemed like maybe he got a little bit overeager with that third base. Do you feel like he would have been in a better position if he would have sort of puts a little bit of pressure on his opponent and on 2 bases and then expanded, rather than just kind of going for that third base, or not?
I think I would have liked that. I'm also kind of biased because I would really like to have seen, the Warp Prism island expansion kind of play come out, because that's always fun. But honestly, I think that we sort of talked about it. It's in comparison to, say, Merry-Go-Round, which is really freaking hard to take a 3rd expansion on. That map, Waste Station, when you have those spawn positions, it's actually also pretty hard to take a 3rd expansion on. We kind of talked about that, and I think it showed. And it was a risk he took, and it didn't really pay off. You're honestly taking a bit of a risk when you go for like an 8:30 or 9-minute expansion on that map against a player who's been going for like this sort of Zergling Roach opening. So yeah.
Yeah, great game from both players though, but that does put us at 3-3. But once